Talk to any detective, investigator, or police officer, and they'll tell you that there's always a handful of cases that haunt them, no matter how long ago it's been. This case we'll be covering today is that kind of case. And by the end of this video, I think you'll understand why. But first, let me welcome you to today's episode of Armchair Investigator. My name is Brooke, and it's so good to have you here with me today. As you're watching today's episode, be sure to let me know your thoughts on it. On June 13th, 1996, Carol Marlin and her good friend Maggie Ginn went out together after work. It was a Thursday. 4 hours after Carol's husband John Peake had last seen her, he called the police and reports his wife missing. Even back then, 4 hours was still considered early to report someone missing, but John insisted this wasn't like Carol at all and was seriously concerned. Detectives? Not so much. They guessed she may have been cozying up with a boyfriend and would eventually show up. You know, that kind of thing. Boy, would they find out just how wrong they were. The next day, a detective searching for Carol spotted her blue Buick Regal parked in Maggie's driveway. Her purse and phone were sitting on the passenger seat. This detective couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Upon entering the home, he finds Carol lying on the kitchen floor. Maggie was in an upstairs bedroom. They both had been beaten to death. Carol receiving the worst part of it. A pile of papers were at the foot of the bed in the room Maggie was found in. Things like receipts, invoices, and bills. In her hand was a crumpled up piece of paper. It was an invoice with a name on it, Barry Webb. It wasn't much, but it was all police had to go off of considering no fingerprints were found in the house. There were no signs of forced entry, and the only witness was a neighbor who had seen a man running across his lawn the previous day, but hadn't been able to get a good look at him. One thing they were sure of, these women knew who their attacker was. And just like that, one missing person case turns into a double homicide case. Who would want to do something like this to Carol and Maggie? When interviewed, Carol's husband John gives them a name, Barry Webb, a coworker who had allegedly sent Carol death threats. That's now the second time Barry's name has come up. When police interview Barry, he claims the signature on the invoice found in Maggie's hand wasn't his. Sure, it was his name, he agreed, but it wasn't his handwriting. Now, he does admit there was hostility between him and John. John was harassing one of their coworkers, a woman named Linda. He was constantly asking her out and making her uncomfortable. You know the type. Barry confronted John about it and told him to leave her alone. Get this. Barry then goes on to tell police that on June 13th, he had caught John trying to break into his house. He said John had a black bag with him, and whatever was in it was banging around and sounded a lot like metal on metal. Remember, June 13th was also the night that Carol and Maggie went out together. It didn't take long for police to start connecting the dots. John had lied to them several times throughout the investigation. For instance, he denied knowing where Maggie Ginn's house was, but showed up there shortly after police were called to the scene. He also told police that Carol was the one who reported the death threat that Barry allegedly sent to her. When detectives visited their workplace, they discovered that, in fact, John was the one who reported it. It doesn't come as much of a shock that John also failed to mention his little rendezvous, or should I say, break-in, at Barry's. Investigators could feel it in their bones that something just didn't sit right with them about John. Even though he was now the prime suspect in the two women's murders, they didn't have enough evidence to charge him. The murder weapon was never found, though they suspect John threw it in the river when he couldn't carry out Plan A. Investigators believed he was breaking into Barry's house so he could plant the murder weapon there, hence the black bag he had with him. That plan fell through, though, when Barry interrupted him. How rude. As investigators worked to try and establish a motive as to why John would kill his wife and her friend, they discovered that John and Carol had changed their life insurance policies just 2 weeks before she was killed. They were both listed as each other's beneficiaries on a policy that came with a cool $700,000 payout. Detectives turn up the heat on John, hoping to get a confession out of him. He doesn't budge. He does lawyer up, though. In the state of Georgia, which is where this takes place, the best way to get a conviction is with physical evidence and a confession. With investigators having nothing but circumstantial evidence, John walks, a painful blow to those who worked on the case. There would be no closure for Carol and Maggie's families, while John got to go on with his life. 9 years go by, and John gets remarried to a woman named Casey. On October 2nd, 2005, John calls police and reports that he has found Casey dead in their bedroom. She'd been shot in the back of the head. He had killed again. They were sure of it. And this time, there was no way they were letting him get away with it. John got lucky for a long time. But you know what they say about pushing your luck. When you have multiple crimes committed by the same person, investigators can use patterns and similarities between the two cases. Because investigators had charted all of the circumstances, lies, and dishonesty from John in the murders of Carol and Maggie, they were able to link the two crimes together, showing probable cause and obtain a search warrant. What was the smoking gun, you might be asking? Could be the fact that John took out a $500,000 life insurance policy on Casey. Ahead of his trial, John was charged with witness tampering after he tried to bribe several people into giving him a false alibi. In the end, he confessed to everything and pled guilty to all 3 murders. He received 3 life sentences and is serving 94 years. Can you believe the nerve of this guy? Did he actually think he could get away with murder for a second time? And in the same county, with the same detectives? It's the confidence for me. I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts regarding this case? Let's have a conversation in the comments below. If you liked today's investigation, give this video a thumbs up. And hey, while you're at it, consider subscribing to the channel. It only takes but a minute and it helps this channel out so much.